What the hell was that? Sorry, I tried to do my Krusty the Clown voice, but I just got done watching Joker, Folie, Deux, and I'm baffled by every single creative choice that was done with this movie. I don't exactly know what they were really going for with this film. I mean, Joker 2019 is a film I like. I don't think it's like the greatest comic book related movie of all time, but it was a movie that I could follow, and a movie that actually has a memorable ending and memorable moments sprinkled throughout in it. It's a character study about somebody like kind of drifting into madness. This film, on the other hand, well, I like the first couple minutes of it. It starts out as kind of like this old school Warner Brothers cartoon. I'm like, oh, I'm actually kind of digging this thing so far. It spends most of its time being this courtroom drama about Arthur Fleck having a split personality. Lady Gaga plays Harley Quinn, kind of. I mean, it's not really much of a connection. It's also partially a musical. And then it just goes to trial, and then it just goes on and on and on. Every single musical number in this thing felt really out of place, like Joker retreats into these fantasy realms. And then it ends in one of the most baffling, endings I've seen in quite a while. This is probably the most bizarre mainstream movie sequel I've ever seen in a theater. Without question. I'm just scratching my head at every creative choice that was made in this film. And also wondering, do we really need this movie by the end of it? Because Joker works fine as a standalone movie. It doesn't need any more. And then Todd Phillips and they're just like, well, the first movie became the highest grossing R-rated film of all time. First R-rated movie to ever make $1 billion. I actually felt like there was more of a point to it. And then we get to this one and it's like, what is the point of it? Why do we need this? I'm kind of disappointed, as you can kind of tell, leaving the theater. I don't feel like I despise that movie or anything like that. As the movie I watched, I'm just like, well, I don't really have much interest in revisiting this one again. I mean, Joaquin Phoenix is a good actor. Lady Gaga can act well just fine. It's like a Joker Harley sort of love story that just kind of blossoms because she's like an obsessed fan of his, and then you're kind of like, is this real? Was this not real? They spend all this time at Arkham, which kind of limits the movie a bit. This movie apparently had a budget of $200 million, and it's a beautifully shot film, but I feel like the first film, I feel like there was so much more that we got out of it than this one. I'm just confused why this one cost as much money as it did when the first film had a lower budget, but I felt like we got to see more of Gotham. Here we're mostly confined to a few locations, Arkham, and then the courtroom, and that's really about it. You have these weird fantasy sequences, which every time a song and musical number comes up, it just feels like less and less of a reason to keep going as you're watching this movie. It just feels so out of place each time it kind of happens. And I wasn't really alone in seeing this. The person, I think I saw one person kind of get up and leave during the movie. There was a person who got up and I was kind of watching the credits, especially where the movie ends in this really not so great sort of way, anticlimactic, I'd say. It was well, that was different than I thought. And yeah, it's not quite the first one. He's like, yeah, it wasn't very good. Yeah, I'm just questioning why this was the movie. So I was kind of I know I was hearing divisive things about it, and I'm like, it can't be this bad, or let's, I'm up for something kind of weird and bizarre. Let's see where they go with this thing. But yeah, Joker Folie Deux is, like I said, the most bizarre mainstream sequel I've ever seen in the theater. I mean, one of the other most bizarre sequels I've seen was Rob Zombie's Halloween 2 with the weird white horse plot thing. That's kind of the vibes I got watching this movie. Just kept going in this direction. Then we get the song numbers, which Joaquin Phoenix is not really the most pleasant voice to listen to. I mean, Lady Gaga is she's got a great singing voice, but Joaquin Phoenix's voice, for a lot of it, they're saying okay. I mean, Arthur Fleck is just in Arkham. You have these other characters. You don't really feel like there's any sort of comeuppance. The first film felt like it had something to really say. This one, I'm just what is it trying to say? Why did we make this? Because the first one made so much money. Man, if only at this point after watching this, and yeah, it's Joaquin Phoenix gives a solid performance, and Lady Gaga does too, but compared to the first film, this is something I don't really see myself wanting to kind of pop in and revisit. I did like the first couple minutes of it where it's kind of like this Warner Brothers Looney Tunes cartoon, like done in like an old school Looney Tunes style. I'm like, okay, like I'm kind of up for this. Like what's so bad about this thing? And then as it just keeps going and going and going, I just felt myself kind of wanting to check my watch more and more for it to kind of like get to the point. I was hearing the ending was something that was people were kind of finding like baffling, and I'm like, okay, let's see where the ending goes. But man, like the ending, I guess I got to get into spoilers right here, but not really recommending the movie. I just kind of left feeling disappointed, really, because I mean, I didn't have high expectations, but going into this one, I'm like, okay, let's see where this can get. Maybe I'll be the outlier who enjoys this movie, but nah, it's not really all that exciting. A lot of it's just kind of boring, just stuck in this courtroom, and then you'll get the occasional musical sequence, which I'm just sitting there, I'm like, it doesn't really feel plot-driven. It just feels like the songs are there because we need songs. I mean, I've seen musicals in theaters before. What was the last one I saw? Wonka. At least the songs felt like connected more to the story, and they were catchy. Here, it's just like he retreats into this fantasy realm, but nothing's really happening. And it's so obvious that it's just like a dream sequence. It's not really there. Whereas the first film, you could kind of play around with, okay, is he really imagining these things or is it not happening? That ambiguity kind of made it a little bit more exciting. But here it's like he has to kind of come to terms with like him. Like, I mean, obviously he's not all there, this guy, but he has to kind of come to terms with it. And it's this trial, and you have characters like Harvey Dent in there. But it just didn't feel all as memorable. Like, I'm just baffled because like this budget apparently cost $200 million, and while it looks nice, it doesn't feel as big or expansive as the first one did, which is surprising. Maybe had to go straight to the salaries, but yeah, I mean, this is one where I don't think the audience is really going to dig it. It's probably it might make its money back, might not, but as a sequel to Joker, a film that really just kind of came out when you needed something a little bit different, this was just a baffling kind of misfire for the most part for me. So let me talk about the ending really quick before I kind of wrap this thing up. But I wasn't too huge into Joker Folie Do, and I like the first film. It's not like one of my favorite comic book movies, but that movie, at least, it felt like it had something interesting to kind of say. And you also have the memorable scene where he's on the talk show host with Murray Franklin, and you see De Niro get shot and all that too. But that stood out. This movie has an ending where basically somebody goes to try and tell Arthur a joke. It's not really funny or anything like that. And then Arthur just gets stabbed, and it kind of ties back to his fantasy from like earlier where he's like with Harley, and then he just kind of dies, and before he could go see his visitor, and the person is kind of laughing and like kind of carving their face up or something behind him, and that's really just the movie. It just ends with him dying. Gaga just kind of walks out of the movie, and there's like a bomb and car explosion that happens at the courthouse. And this is a movie where there's just random shots that look cool, like they could make a good trailer, but doesn't really like make all that great of a movie. Yeah, this is just, I don't know, man. I really don't know why we needed this movie the way it was. It exists. It's kind of a disappointment. I just feel kind of underwhelmed, really, by the end of it. So I don't think this is the worst thing I've ever sat through, but it's just kind of boring, underwhelming, not the best. There's maybe a few jokes that were kind of funny. There's one scene where Arthur, because he's going to get somebody's like, "Hey, Arthur, can you sign my book?" And he signs it, and then he's like, "Hey, it's going to be worth a fortune," when Arthur gets the chair. And then Arthur just writes like a joke where it's just like, "I hope you have," like, instead of signing, he writes, "I hope you have cancer." And I'm like, I legit laughed at that. That was darkly kind of funny. But the rest of the film, just like, there's some questionable things. Like, why are they giving these inmates like lighters and all that? And Gaga sets the thing on fire. Like, what did you think was going to happen? Like, wouldn't that be like a red flag? It feels like some of these characters, like with the prison guards or whatever, they're going to get some sort of comeuppance or anything like that. No, nothing really happens to them. So much of this movie is confined to this asylum, and it feels kind of limiting. Like, for some of the week, yeah, it would be kind of interesting to see Joker in this, or this version of Joker in this place, but you're kind of limiting yourself. That's what I liked about the last movie. It's like more of like Joker in the outside world and just kind of interacting with kind of the everyday people. It felt more like limitless, like it can kind of do more. This one, it's just like, it's so contained, and it's not very interesting stuff that's kind of happening. Like, what are we really exploring here and whatnot? And yeah, this was a bizarre, baffling film that I'm just kind of like, why do we need to do it this way? So maybe some people will like it. It's getting a very divisive, polarizing response. I wanted to go into this thing really enjoying it, but it didn't really hit the mark for me the way I was kind of hoping for. So, yeah, Joker Folie Deux is a baffling creative misfire for me. Like, I'm just, like I said, just all the creative choices made in this film, I'm just like, why was that done? Why was that done? I feel like this is a movie where I'm going to be fascinated by all the video essays that are going to come out about it. And who knows, maybe a few years from now, I may kind of look on it a little bit differently. But I just think this should be it for Todd Phillips making these types of movies. Because, like I said, the first one worked just fine. The second one, it's like, oh, man, you didn't really need it. Like, you should have just went out in the high notes, unless you had something really interesting to kind of say or do. And I just don't feel like we really got that with this one. So, like, I'm just like, yeah, I just kind of wish this one didn't really happen, because it kind of almost taints the first movie a little bit. So, yeah, that's all I really have to say. Joker Folie Deux is just it exists. It's a movie, and it really wasn't something that I really enjoyed watching all that much. I'm not like screaming with rage or anything like that. I just feel underwhelmed and kind of bored, and that's really just the reaction you don't really want. So yeah, not really a great look for DC movies right now. But next year, well, like I said, this Todd Phillips stuff, let him kind of go away. We don't need him making any more DC related films, especially after this. He, like I said, got lucky with Joker, but now at this point, I'm like, I think he just really likes Joaquin Phoenix. But yeah, like, why did we do this? And what was with the musical anyways? Like, it just felt so out of place every time a song sequence kind of happened. They weren't really like great songs or great musical numbers too. So it just didn't really feel as intertwined with the plot. I just felt like, classic movies have musical scenes, so let's just kind of throw that in there. So, yeah, maybe some people will like it. I don't know. By the end of it, I just felt kind of like, why were we here? But I am looking forward to all the video essays about this is the worst thing ever, this is secretly genius, or something like that. Like I said, Arthur doesn't really like do much. Like, you don't really get to see him enact any sort of violence towards people like in the first film. He's just kind of restrained the whole time, and that's not as exciting for me. I like to see Joker a little bit more chaotic and out doing other like crazy stuff, but anything that happens is really confined to his mind, whereas the first film, like, he actually was doing stuff. Here he was just like, he's kind of limited, and it's not like you can't have movies where there's a character kind of like behind like a cell or something for the most part to make it interesting. Like Silence of the Lambs is a prime example. Like Hannibal Lecter, for the majority of that movie, is behind a cell, but it's the conversations are interesting, they're engaging, and you feel kind of the threat with him. With here, Arthur, it's just like, he is in Arkham, but he's just kind of limited. And then we get these musical numbers, and I'm just like, yeah, what are we doing? So, yeah. All right, I've rambled on long enough about Joker Folie Deux. I mean, maybe check it out if you're curious, but I felt like my audience in particular was just kind of like, what did we just watch? And that's not a very good sign for this type of film. I don't think it's going to do all that great. It's just a really, like, scratch your head type of movie. Like, why did we do this? So, yeah. All right, well, thanks for watching, everybody. Post your comments down below, like the video, share with your friends, all that other fun stuff, and I'll see you all next time. Peace out.